In this section, we're going to take a look at color basics and how you can use color to create harmony within your pieces. So as a digital artist, we are given an almost unlimited palette of colors to use at our disposal, but it's knowing how to limit our choices in color to create harmony and balance within it. So let's get started with some of the basic color terms. And the terms you should become familiar with are hue, value, and saturation. And these are crucial to understanding what the identity of a color truly is. And to start us off, the hue is the identity of a color. And this is the easiest to remember because you can just separate them based on the colors that you already know. So terms like red, blue, and yellow, those are all examples of different hues of color. Now the second term is value, and that defines how light or dark the color is. And this is also described as the lightness of a color because it often describes in a scene if there's a really intense bright light, then most of your values will appear to be higher in value. But if it's more of a dark scene, then it'll appear to have a lower value to the different colors. And lastly, the saturation, which describes the intensity of a color, and can also be known as the chroma. And colors that are higher in saturation often draw the eye's attention, but you gotta be careful because if you have too much saturation everywhere, it will most likely be more irritating than appealing. So be very careful about how you lay out your different saturations. And if you're in Photoshop and you go to pick a color, this little color picker menu will come up, and it's a great way to kind of display the hue, value, and saturation in a neat little organized fashion. So the bar on the far right is the hue, and the hue has a slider bar all its own. So from there you can kind of choose if you want more of a reddish, more blue, more green, whatever it may be, and then you choose in there what hue of the color you want. And now this box represents the value and saturation. So the value scale is vertical, and you can remember that because they both start with a V. So if you go up on the value scale, you'll get lighter in value, and if you go lower, you'll get darker. And then left to right, or horizontal, is the saturation of a color. So the farther right you go, the more saturated, where the farther left you go, the less saturated. So just remember value is vertical, saturation is horizontal, and hue has a rainbow slider bar all its own. And you want to become very comfortable with these terms because these three are the most important terms when identifying a color. So now let's talk about the color wheel and knowing how to work with different colors in your own pieces. So for this, I'm going to be using the traditional color wheel. I find it the most useful in defining the complementaries of both the primary and secondary colors. So let's break down this color wheel and start talking about the different groupings of color that we have. And the first group are the primary colors, and that consists of red, yellow, and blue. And you can see how the three colors are at equal distance from each other. And if you take two of these primary colors and mix them together, that will form each of the different secondary colors. And this consists of orange, green, and purple. And the reason I like this color wheel so much is because every color is at opposite with its complement. So red and green, blue and orange, and purple and yellow are different complementary colors. And they are complementary because when placed next to each other, they create a strong hue contrast and, well, they complement each other, hence the name. So now from here, if you took a primary color and then matched it up with the closest secondary color, and if you mix them together, that's when we create our tertiary colors. And these color names are labeled from red, orange, yellow, orange, blue, purple. Pretty much they take one of each of the colors and then match them together with a dash in between. And each of these tertiary colors even have a complement of its own, so if you look at the wheel, whatever color is opposite will still be its complementary color. So when working on your own pieces, whether it's for characters, environments, or even weapons, if the subject matter is primarily a certain color, so let's say specifically red, then maybe you should accent it with some of the green since it's a complementary color. And just try to work with the different opposites of the color wheel, and hopefully in time you'll kind of see how they complement each other, and they really do create a nice visual balance between the two. And speaking of balance, let's start talking about the different temperatures that a color palette can hold. So another reason why I like to use the traditional color wheel is because you can literally split it in half to recognize and differentiate the warm and cool colors. So the top half consists of our warm colors, where the bottom half consists of our cooler colors. So warm colors tend to make you think of heat and look as though they come closer in perspective, where cool colors are more calming and soothing, and they tend to appear as though they are receding. And this is another great example of where you can start thinking of using colors to complement each other. So a great example would be if there was a really cold, harsh environment concept that had a lot of cool colors like blue, and then there was a cabin in that scene that was producing a very faint orangish yellow glow. That warmth from the glow will be a nice complement to the harsh, cold environment around it, and it will create a harmony between the two. So don't just think that you have to complement colors with each other, but you can also complement temperatures as well. So the last thing that we're going to talk about are color palettes and how to go about choosing the colors that are right for the subject matter that you're working on. So most digital artists tend to work with either a color palette or just pick and choose colors as they go. But both are making conscious selections of the colors that they're choosing to work well with the scene. And the combination of colors that you will choose will either create a harmony or opposition in the scene. So you already know that you should be thinking about using complementaries while working in your color choosing, but now let's talk about bending your colors. And there's a specific term called hue shifting in which you will literally bend your light and shadow sources to either warm or cool. So when adding colors for your lighting and shadows, an easy way to add temperature is to bend your lighting towards the yellow hues and bend your shadows to the cool hues such as purple or blue. And you don't have to over-exaggerate this though. Sometimes it's the subtle change that really makes all the difference. So if you're working with a palette, just avoid creating a hue transition going lighter in the value range. So don't just choose pink and then choose a lighter value for each step, but really think about bending it towards the lighter colors such as yellow, and you can see how it adds a bit more interest in the bottom spheres than it does on the top spheres. And I can tell you all the terms and definitions of colors, but really the best way to understand color is through practice. So the more that you practice using colors in your own pieces, the more you'll be comfortable with knowing what colors do work well together and what colors definitely do not work well together, and really gain an overall sense of confidence while you're going and choosing your colors to help create harmony within your scene. So if you believe you are someone that considers themselves a complete beginner with understanding color, keep these few tips in mind. Always think about complementary colors and how that can add a visual balance to your composition. Avoid oversaturating your pieces. I see a lot of digital artists just starting off feel the need to add as many vibrant colors as they can to their pieces to really make them stand out, but in reality, it becomes more distracting and really takes away from that concept itself. Learn to bend your colors. So don't just have skin be on a value scale from light brown to a lighter brown. Really think about the different red and yellow and blue hues that can be included in skin as well. Try to stick with a consistent value range, and I recommend working with more desaturated colors and then maybe using saturated colors to make something stand out more. And lastly, experiment. You never know what colors might work well together until you try it yourself. And in our next and final video of our Getting Started in Digital Art series, we're going to start talking about materials.